In this video, I want to talk a little bit about my testimony and how I found Jesus, how I kind of started to cultivate a relationship with him, and just the dark path I was walking on in hopes that maybe my message resonates with someone out there and that maybe they can glean something from it, either to avoid the same mistakes, the same sin that I had, or to maybe bring them closer to Christ on their walk. I guess my story starts way back when I was 9 years old. That year was interesting for spring break. That year we went to Disney World. Things were perfect. That's a child's paradise. I was so happy. My parents were divorced growing up, but it wasn't a huge impact on my life. Didn't have a close relationship with my mom, but it was just something that was kind of a fact of life. And that summer, going into that summer, they had made an agreement that we could live together, or we could live with her mom, which had never really been a long-term agreement up until that point. So we were excited, and I was really happy to kind of build that relationship with her. And we moved down to right outside Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is actually where I was born. And it was good. It was the first summer we spent together. It was great. She had seemingly everything together. She had a new relationship. She had a new apartment. We got enrolled in school. Life was good. But little did I know there was a lot of underlying issues that she was struggling with: depression, drug addiction, and all these things. And, you know, things led to another, and eventually she ended up breaking up with her boyfriend at the time and ended up relapsing. And she relapsed, and that was the time that her body couldn't take it anymore, and she overdosed. And so at 9 years old, my mom died. And, about a week earlier, and this is crazy because, in the last video, I talked about Ephesians, right? And wearing the spiritual armor of God. But to wear the armor, you first need to know that the armor exists, right? I was so ignorant. I was so vulnerable. And I don't blame my 9-year-old self. He didn't know about Christ. He didn't know about God. We kind of were exposed to church a little bit. Yeah, I think I got baptized when I was a toddler, but it wasn't a part of my life. It wasn't something I relied on. And so about a week before she passed, I wouldn't call him a friend, but I was exposed to pornography for the first time. And, you just get that gut feeling that something's wrong right from the get-go, and that's exactly how I felt. But it's like, when you see a video of a car crash, it's kind of the same, like, you shouldn't be watching it, but you can't help but look away. And that's exactly how I felt. I read a book called Every Young Man's Battle, and I highly recommend it if you're struggling with that sort of addiction, and we'll get more into that later. But, I was kind of grossed out by it, but I was still drawn to it at the same time. Again, like these car crash videos, it's the same type of thing. And, you know it's wrong, but you can't help but look away. And this was a week before she passed. And the reason I draw attention to that is because without God in my life, without that rock, that foundation to really weather the storm of such a troubling time as a kid, that kind of became my escape. When you're watching that kind of material, right, your brain is numb. It feels good. It's a dopamine high. It's just like a drug addiction, right? And I used that for so long to just numb any sort of emotion, especially the death of her. And, didn't even know what masturbation was, but just watching it, again, is like this morbid curiosity, obsession with it. And that became this addiction, along with video games, actually, that just consumed me for the better part of really over a decade. And yeah, that became my life. moved back with my grandma, and then eventually with my dad. And, you know, get a little bit older and hormones start getting worse, and you start discovering more and more about your own body. And, you know, porn and masturbation again just became a regular thing. And I didn't think anything was wrong. I didn't know there was demonic energy behind it, that it was the enemy really taking a hold of my soul, but it just felt normal. And yet, for me, it was an escape from the pain and the heartbreak of losing someone so close to you at such a young age. And it stunted my growth in so many ways, with people, with women, and eventually with God. And, you know, this just became a thing. I moved around quite a bit, just because the nature of my dad being in the Army. We moved around from base to base. And, you know, we end up in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, I kind of had my first interaction with a girl. And almost immediately, I began to objectify her and take it that route, because that was so normalized inside my head. And, you know, I was literally strangled by this addiction. I was reading Proverbs, and this is, you know, the word in action, right? Proverbs 5:22 says, "An evil man is held captive by his own sins. They are ropes that catch and hold him. He will die for lack of self-control. He will be lost because of his great foolishness." I could not control myself. If I was alone in the house, I would watch it. If I was late at night, I would watch it. Even with this girl who I was madly into, it worked its way into that relationship and corrupted and destroyed it from the inside out. And I was so depressed and so empty. And I didn't know why, right? I didn't know why. Again, I did this thing every single day, multiple times a day on, you know, many days, and just no idea what was wrong. Moving into New York, and the same thing, right? I thought maybe moving from Hawaii to New York, the cold, the environment. No, it was my addiction. I didn't leave the house. I didn't go and make new friends, especially for my sophomore year. The whole year, I just sat inside and engaged in that activity. It was horrible. It was consuming me, right? It was the ropes that caught and hold me. It was like chains. It was like bondage. I couldn't function. I would go to school and I'd be so sad. I wouldn't talk to people. I wouldn't engage with people. I didn't go to church. I didn't read my Bible. I didn't do anything productive. It's a blessing that I managed to score decent enough on an SAT to get into the college that I did. And I think that was honestly kind of the first steps that God was making in my life to kind of save me. You know, around sophomore, junior year, if anybody's in that period of life, you start thinking about college, and you start thinking about the cost of college too. It's not cheap. And, you know, more and more started thinking about West Point and going there. It's free. I could use that as a way to pay for college, and maybe build myself up into the man I wanted to become, right? That was kind of the idea. And when I talk about these first steps of God working in my life in very subtle ways, the moment I open the application, a week later, I get a phone call from an old grad offering to just sit down for a cup of coffee and just walk me through the application process and really just help me out. I know that's not a unique experience just to me, but it felt very personalized. It felt very personal. And even when I visited West Point, one of the officers pulled me into a room and he told me, hey, like, here's the things you need to do in your application to increase your chances of getting in. And I made those changes, and sure enough, I got accepted. You know, peak COVID, actually right before COVID started, this was in February of 2020. You know, going through all these highs in life, yet I still felt so empty, right? Things were pouring into my cup, but there was a hole in the bottom of the cup because I had this addiction, honestly, right? Right? And verse 23 I read earlier, right? Die for lack of self-control, lost because of his great foolishness. I was so foolish, I was lost because I kind of knew what the end goal was in mind, getting to West Point, graduating, but I didn't have a spiritual goal in mind. I didn't have that as an aspect of my life. And I was going down the path of destruction and honestly towards death. So I get into West Point, and again, this addiction, it's still a regular thing, even with roommates, even in a communal space. You find time, you find opportunities, and it's really shameful to say that, but that was like a regular thing. And I think, you know, I gained this aura of like cockiness and confidence in my own self, right? Um, because not only did I watch it, but I started to bring other girls into it too. And this is where it gets kind of dark in a way, where um, you know, now I see everybody, men, women, children, etc. Right? We're all children of God, but at the time I didn't see that. Everything was for my own narcissistic needs, my own selfish needs, my own desires. So these girls I would talk to, I didn't see them as friends. I didn't see them as equals. I didn't see them as brothers and sisters. Um, right? We're not siblings as children of God. I just saw them as objects that I could use for my own pleasure. And now this addiction was manifesting itself in my relationships. How I did back in Hawaii with my first real, I don't want to call her girlfriend, but just experience with the opposite sex. And I, it became a thing. Multiple girls at the same time, really devaluing them, devaluing myself, disrespecting my body, disrespecting their body. And it was terrible. It was so bad. And, right, like, you know, Proverbs talks about immoral women, promiscuous women, and how you should stay away from them. And I don't think any of these girls were particularly that way. In fact, I was the one who was promiscuous, right? Sexually driven, driven by lust, driven by temptation, and pushing them in ways that maybe they weren't comfortable with, but because they wanted me, they did that. And again, I became so desensitized to it. Again, it's a drug addiction. It's like I had to continually raise the stakes, raise the bar to keep fueling this thing. And, you know, that just again was a normal thing. And I just felt so lost and heartbroken because when you do that to people, it breaks them and they push you away. And I'm like, I didn't understand why, right? I didn't understand why. And that same sort of dark energy, using other people in like a objective way, I did that to other people, not just in a romantic or sexual context. Even my close relationships, like my brother, even friends. I was often looking for ways of how can I use this to help me. Um, and I caused a lot of emotional damage, a lot of hurt to a lot of people who did not deserve it. My brother, my family members, just getting in arguments, criticizing, shaming, right? Plucking out the speck in my brother's eye when there's a log in my own, or, you know, as Jesus said, right? He who's without sin cast the first stone. I was throwing all the rocks, every single rock I could find, throwing it at other people to deflect from my own shame and my own sorrow, and my own depression. Um, and yeah, my mind was corrupted. I couldn't have a steady relationship with a girl. I couldn't talk to a girl for more than a few weeks because, again, you put them through that and you lose all respect for yourself. You lose all respect for them. And it was so regular. I didn't know why I felt so empty, but I did. And I eventually got the opportunity to do a semester abroad in Taiwan. And I went. Leading up to that fall semester, I went to Thailand on vacation. It was a solo trip. And if you know anything about Thailand, you're there for not good reasons. And I was certainly um, partaking in that sin, right? There's brothels, there's whorehouses, there's uh, you could pay for sex essentially, right? And I engaged in a lot. It was about a week there. I think I spent the night with 8 different women. And again, I didn't care, right? Girls would cry when I kick them out, and I didn't care. I thought it was so cool, right? In my 20s, life's good. I'm doing what I want. I'm on a jet ski. I'm getting drunk, getting lit. Living for myself, living for the flesh, living for the world. Life's good, right? I'm so happy. This is awesome. Anyone would kill to be in my shoes. But I was so empty inside, so lost. And so I get to Taiwan, and I'm in this new environment. I'm out of my element, but the addiction's still there. So I began to seek that out. I'm on dating apps, and I eventually meet a girl, and we'd go on to have a year-plus long relationship, and it was great. But again, on the first night, we slept together. We became one flesh on the first night. And I'm not knocking her or shaming her in any way, but that was what I wanted, right? It was for me. And looking back, she definitely engaged and initiated, but I didn't stop her. I partook too. And I felt like that might cure me, that might help me, having an intimate relationship with someone else. But a few months go by where I kind of went cold turkey on the porn and everything, because I didn't need it, right? I had someone else to fill that part of my life. And sure enough, I came crawling back to my same sin. It's an addiction. It was never satisfying. And issues started to crop up, especially as our relationship went long distance. Anger, bitterness, confusion, lack of trust, accusations, and all these things, these emotions, lack of objectivity, right, was really rooted in this lack of biblical structure to my life. She's not a believer, and I don't see my place to evangelize and force that upon her. But she saw me as a Christian. We did talk about it. She saw me that way. But I have a hard time calling myself a Christian, or at least that version of myself. He was lying. He was deceitful. He was dishonest. He was not true to his word, right? Keeping this relationship going on, but talking to other girls on the side to fill this selfish desire up, still watching pornography, still engaging in this deplorable behavior. And it kept going. And I come back to the States, and a few months go by, and I turn 21. And so you can imagine all this, right? And alcohol gets introduced into the mix. So doesn't exactly make it any better, right? Because you're making all these poor decisions, and all alcohol does is make even more poor decisions. And yeah, so it really became to magnify everything. And I was so broken. I started thinking more and more about the things from my past, the things with my mom, the things with everything. And, I was looking for a way out. I wanted to numb myself. I started getting really fixated on thoughts of suicide and thoughts of just killing myself and giving up, because it felt like the right answer. It felt like the easy way out. I would write notes. I would write notes on my phone. I would come up with plans for what would happen when I left the world, because I knew deep down something was so wrong with me, and I couldn't tell anybody. I felt like I couldn't tell anybody. And I'm struggling. I'm drinking so much, getting blacked out on the weekends, not going to church, not reading my Bible. And it's crazy. I even had someone in my life at the time who was bringing me to church and really trying his hardest to to imbue this word of God in me, I'd bring my Bible. Bible wouldn't be open. I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't engaging with the word. I wouldn't meditate on the word. Um, you know, I I was I was not living in the spirit, right? Um, yeah, Proverbs is so good. I can go a little bit more. Proverbs 6, right? Um, what are worthless and wicked people like? They are constant liars, signaling their deceit with a wink of an eye, right? I was lying to myself. I was lying to my girlfriend. I was lying to my friends. I was lying to everybody, putting on this front that I am a Christian, but I wasn't. I wasn't really doing the things in a manner that was of Christ, right? Um, I started to wear my girlfriend's ring on my necklace, and I realized I was putting her above everything else. How she felt was how I felt, and I was comparing myself to this image of being this perfect boyfriend. And when you do things for people, you'll never be enough, right? Because the only person who was perfect was Jesus, and he had to die for us so that we could be saved and be brought to salvation. And here I am trying to pour myself out for a person rather than God. And I'm sure you can kind of figure out where this is kind of going, right? When you pour yourself so fully devoted and committed to a person, it breaks you. I had all these addictions, and I started to lash out at her, right? That the enemy was taking hold of me. Um, Again, I was captive to my sin, right? The sexual desires, the lust, the desire for affirmation from other people and accolades and all these things I was chasing for the world while I was feeling so empty and lost on the inside, right? And, you know, eventually everything came crumbling down. And it all fell apart. It all fell apart kind of at once, too. One of the girls who I was talking to, who wasn't my girlfriend, messaged my girlfriend and was like, hey, he's doing all these things. Here's the messages, here's the screenshots, here's all the evidence. And, originally I was mad. I was mad at her. I was mad at my girlfriend. Why? Who are you to call me out? Look at me. I'm perfect. I'm amazing. I didn't take ownership. I didn't take responsibility. I got angry. I got defensive. I got mad. I lashed out. I was very narcissistic, and I needed that. I needed to be called out in that way. And I think even at that time, I was still holding on to this false image of maybe what we could be. Maybe I could fix it. Maybe if I did more, I could fix it. But you can't, right? You couldn't. And I'm devoting yourself to a person rather than to the word and to God, and putting your faith in Jesus Christ. Like, you will always feel empty. You will always feel inadequate when you do that. And we go on this vacation. We go together to Vietnam, and it's fine. It's good. And I didn't own up to my mistakes. I didn't apologize when I was there, when I had every opportunity to. We got in fights, arguments. Again, just being narcissistic, doing what I wanted. Other people be damned. And sure enough, get back to the States and thinking maybe we can keep on. And I ask her, can you please come to my graduation? And she says no. And I was hurt. I didn't even consider the fact of all the heartbreak and hardship I had put her through. I was the one who was hurt. I was the one who was offended. So I hung up the phone, which is an extremely rude thing to do. I hung up the phone and I lashed out over text. I'm like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. This is like, means the world to me, and me. That's all you could hear. And I just I deleted all the photos. I cut her off my Amex account. I did all these things. I blocked her number. And then I went to the bar and I got blacked out drunk. I threw up everywhere. And I woke up the next morning, hungover, smelling like alcohol. Text on my phone. Hey, it's from my friend. Hey, we're going to church. We'd love for you to join us. And I don't know how, but I made it up to the car and I made it into the car, and I'm fighting the urge to throw up in the back seat. We're driving, and I'm in the back seat. I'm scooting around, and I'm fighting the urge to throw up because the alcohol's still in my system. And I get there, and they're talking about the story of the eunuch, and the eunuch is riding by on his camel, and he sees people getting baptized, and he wasn't ready to get baptized. He wasn't prepared. He didn't know he was going to be baptized, but he asked, why not me? And he gets baptized. Being there at the right place at the right time, they offered that opportunity for repentance, public acceptance of Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And I sat there for 10 minutes just watching people go by and get baptized. And in my own head, what do people think? What will people do? What will people say? I don't got clothes to be baptized. I don't know. And I just said, you know what? I need to do this. And, right. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Jeremiah 29 says, in a similar way, right? 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope, right? You put your full trust in because the Lord's plan is better. His plan is better. And I was so sad and depressed, right? This relationship blew up in my face because of my own actions. And I had this grandiose plan. We're going to go on all these vacations. Maybe we'll get married. This is the plan I want. I want this so bad. And I blew it up. It blew up right in my face. But it needed to blow up in my face, and God needed to make me isolated in that period because, again, his plan is better, right? Jeremiah 29:11, right? For I know the plans I have for you. I needed to go through that. I needed to be at such a rock bottom, addicted to drinking, addicted to porn, addicted to women, addicted to lust, addicted to all these things, for him to work his way into my life and grab my heart, right? And I got baptized, and it felt like the weight of years of pain, sadness, depression was just lifted off my shoulders. And now I'm not gonna say I'm perfect. Nobody's perfect. But since then, I haven't had the urge to drink. I've really reduced my circle. I don't talk to women. I don't in that way anymore. I'm single now. I pray for her. I pray for healing. I pray for peace in her life. But I know that, again, his plan is better, and his plan for us is to be separate. That's okay. Again, and the more and more I meditate on the word, I got this prayer journal, and I've been writing in it daily, right? Praying for other people, praying for myself, trying to memorize verses and grow a deeper understanding of the word, right? And things have just been going right. I don't even know. I think it's interesting. Psalm 139 talks about your heart must be searched by God, and we must be humble enough to allow him. This is a note I made on Psalm 139, right? He's asking the Lord to search his heart, right? Kind of give him a perspective on where he's falling short. And I wrote that, we must be humble enough to allow him to give us that 360 perspective on how our hearts operate, and to improve our emotional quotient, to help us crucify the flesh, I'm amazed that David, which is the one writing the psalm, was so high and mighty and powerful, yet he still sought humility and shows that God is willing to provide free will to us to make our own decisions, to reap what we sow, right? But also provides the guidance and wisdom to heal our hearts in a way that only He can. It can apply to everybody's life by helping build humility and surrenderance in a biblical manner, to detest rebellion and defiance, and live with His word and His plan. This was a few days ago, and I read Jeremiah 29 today. Read that verse 29:11 about His plan greater than my plan. His plan is the plan, right? But for years, I was just living in my own plan, living in defiance, living in sin, living in lust, living in temptation. And even when I was, right, my friends trying to bring me to church and kind of soften my heart up and expose me to the word, I would take it, some things would make me feel good, and I would just live in defiance. I would openly tell people I'm Christian, yet I would just defy the law, defy the commandments, defy God. And, since accepting Jesus into my heart as my Savior, dude, so much has changed. You don't even understand. Like, I still find myself ruminating. I still find myself struggling with the loss. And I think that's natural, but I realize now that it's a carnal desire. I pray for her, but our relationship was skin deep. We had a sexual connection, an intimate connection in that context in the bedroom, but romantically it was not very deep. I was emotionally unavailable, spiritually dead, and we weren't growing towards anything greater. And that's me. That's all me. And, since then, like, my perspective has changed, my goals have changed, and things like just are falling into place in ways I could not possibly imagine. Yes, I'm isolated. Yes, things are in transition. Things are confusing, but I know that His plan is greater than mine. I just graduated. I have my job all lined up. I just got a car, which I didn't even think was possible. Opportunities are opening up for my business, and things are good. Things are really, really good. And again, I could, amount that to things that I've done, but it's all because of Him, all because of the way that He's working and moving in my life. And I just pray that those opportunities can be experienced by everybody. So I'm super blessed to have made it to this point. I just know that I was so broken and lost, heartbroken before, thinking that was all there was to life. Fulfilling the flesh, filling up this cup that will never be full, because the only thing that can really fill you up with the love and that fullness that you really need, that your spirit really needs, is God. And now I understand that. Whereas before I was just defying it every single day. So just as, Paul is writing to Timothy in 1 Timothy, right? I urge you, first of all, to pray for all people. Ask God to help them, intercede on their behalf, and give thanks for them, right? Just as I pray for Cindy, I pray for you guys. I pray for my friends. I pray for those who have yet to be delivered but are in this period of depression and sadness and sin. I pray that they can be delivered from that. I pray that they can move closer with Christ. I pray that they can understand how God moves and how God is moving in their life. I think it's really interesting when, it talks about being in 1 Timothy, right? He's talking about being kind of like a leader, right? And giving advice, and right, in 1 Timothy 5:16, keep a close watch on how you live and how on your teaching. Stay true to what is right for the sake of your own salvation for those who hear you. I don't know if these videos are teaching points or any sort of way to help, but I know for me, really pouring myself out in thought, in meditation on the word, in I guess a video format, just helps kind of wrangle my thoughts and connect the dots between different verses in a way maybe that I could not have extrapolated before. In that last sermon that we had, all the seniors, we had a sermon to kind of send off all the seniors. It's from Second Timothy 4:5, right? It says, "But you should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you." Some other translations say, "Be sober-minded." I took that literally. I have not gotten drunk since reading that verse. And that was a few weeks ago. And I guess through these videos, right, I'm trying to share the good news and carrying out the ministry of God. It's a little bit hard being in transition and not having like a home base to call my home. Um, I don't know what that ministry looks like. I don't know where I'm being called to serve, but I know that that calling is still out there. And I'm doing what I can right now through these videos and just through to sharing my story. Um, Again, yeah, just destruction, honestly, just self-destruction, fulfilling the body, fulfilling the flesh for years, and eventually getting to a point where when I feel stressed, when I feel worried, when I feel sad, I turn to the word, and I just hope that by sharing that with someone, maybe it can influence them in a positive way. I know I'm not like, again, my understanding of the Bible is still very limited. I'm working to get better at that. I'm reading it every day, writing about it, meditating on it. But yeah, so I just hope that this video found you, and if it found you in a place of, despair, discouragement, just understand, again, you're in spiritual warfare. We're all in some sort of form of spiritual warfare. But God gives you the tools. He gives you the word. Just as Jesus used the word to resist temptation by the devil, you too can use the word to resist those same temptations in your life. Thank you so much for watching. If this message inspired you or helped you out in any way, I'd love to talk down below in the comments. And yeah, maybe next time the do-rag comes on, the Bible comes out, maybe we'll make another video. Thank you.